Lemonada.
Here's an interesting question. What if one small act of generosity became one of the most meaningful parts of your month? At Children Incorporated, sponsoring a child helps remove the barriers that poverty creates so children can stay in school and build brighter futures.
And perhaps that's the surprising thing about generosity. It changes everyone involved. Learn more at childrenincorporated.org. That's childrenincorporated.org. You can focus on exercise, nutrition, all the things you're supposed to do for your health. But if you are not sleeping well, it is very hard to feel refreshed.
Especially when you wake up overheated in the middle of the night, that completely affects my sleep, which is why I love the ChiliPad 2.0 by Sleep Me. It is a water-based mattress topper that controls your sleep temperature and works with your existing mattress. And if one person sleeps hot and the other sleeps cold, and that's Adam and me, each side can have its own temperature setting, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I also love that it automatically starts when you get into bed, so it feels seamless. Visit www.sleep.me/Gretchen to get up to $255 off your ChiliPad 2.0 with code Gretchen. This special offer is available for happier listeners and only for a limited time. Order it today with free shipping and try it out for 30 days. You can return it for free if you don't like it with their sleep trial. Visit www.sleep.me/Gretchen and see why cold sleep is your ultimate ally in performance and recovery. Hello, we're here for More Happier, a podcast where we get happier. Join us for some weekend listening with observations and reflections with a looser vibe. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, Gretch.
Today, we're revisiting some of our favorite conversation hacks and recommendations about reading.
Which feels very appropriate for summer.
Yes, it does. Summer reading is the best. I'm so excited to think more about reading because my Summer of Virginia Woolf's Diary is officially underway. I wasn't sure whether I would enjoy reading these diaries, but I do. So I am deep into them.
Yeah, I need to figure out what I'm reading for the rest of the summer. So maybe these clips will help.
Well, one thing that's been helping a lot of listeners is using the reading section in the Design Your Summer tool on the Happier app. It's a place to keep track of the books you want to read. So, you get a recommendation or you decide on your own summer reading project, you have somewhere to put it. And then, of course, it's very satisfying to watch yourself make progress through it over the course of the summer. So fun to cross them off.
Ooh, I need to try that.
Yeah, I think you'd find it really fun. Hopefully some of the ideas in today's episode will help you get more reading done too.
Okay, let's listen back. And now it's time for a try this at home.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, this week our try this at home tip is to read more. And one of the things I have to say when I was writing my book, Better Than Before, about habit change, is I was so surprised and encouraged by how many people told me that they really wanted to change the habit of reading so that they would read more. I love to read, you love to read, but it was interesting to me that so many people were working on the habit of reading more.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something I'm always working on, Gretch. I feel like when I was younger, I just read all the time. And as I get older, I feel like I have less time to read, although I know I'm doing things other than reading. I could be reading more, like watching The Housewives. And I don't know if other people have this problem, but one thing I find is that I just have a problem starting a book. So it's like I might have a book sitting there that I want to read, and I won't read the first page. Once I read the first 2 or 3 pages, I'm in. And if I like it, I'll find the time and I'll finish the book. But it's just opening the book is such a barrier to entry for me.
Well, so in a weird way, what you need is just the habit of reading the first 2 pages of a book. Just that might take you a long way. So what do you think you could do to have that habit?
I don't know. Maybe I need to say something like, as soon as I finish a book, I pick up something and read the first 2 pages of another book. Because I could go 3 weeks, between books just because I haven't picked one up.
I think that's a fantastic idea to have. Like Anthony Trollope, when he wrote novels, he wrote a certain amount each day, and he would literally like write, and then he would write the end, and then he would start the next one. And so maybe that's a good idea, is as sort of a celebration of finishing a book, which always feels good to kind of finish a book. You could say, okay, in this same reading period, pick up and start the next one. That sounds fun and manageable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I should try that. And I always have one right there, at the ready. So it shouldn't be a problem.
Right, right. Well, another thing that I've done that has really given me a lot more time to read, bizarrely, is to quit reading. I used to have this idea that like a real reader finishes every book she starts. But what would happen is that I would be reading a book I didn't like, and then I wouldn't be reading very much because it just wasn't any fun to read. And so it would slow me down. But now if I lose interest in a book, I stop reading it. And so now I have so much more time to read the books that I love. And I'm always reading a book that I feel like reading. And so it's more fun and more time.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. I think a lot of us feel really guilty if we don't finish a book. It feels like a sin.
Yeah.
And I think it's because you feel like, well, I can't count this book. If I don't finish it, I haven't really read it.
Yeah.
And so it also just feels like a lack of an accomplishment. But we're really not reading to accomplish like having read a book off our list. We're really reading to read. So if you just think of it that way, finishing loses its importance.
Well, and also, I mean, kind of picking up the same idea, and this is what you said, is when I'm reading a book I love, I'm amazed by how quickly I can read it, how much time I find to read it. If there's a book you love, you find the time. But if you're not that enthusiastic about it, you're like, I don't have any time to read. So there's this great line by Thoreau who said, read the best books first, otherwise you'll find you do not have time. And I really think it's true.
So what else can people do? I mean, this is a question that we get over and over and over again.
Well, one thing I think is to skim. This is something that I've learned. Like if you read newspapers and magazines, and I still read them in paper form, a lot of times you get what you need by skimming. You don't have to like read in this very, very slow way, and you get through a lot more. And so sometimes I really say to myself, I just want to skim through this. I just want to get the gist. I don't have to read it slowly. I'm going to really push myself to read it faster.
Yeah, that's definitely true for like a parenting book, for example. Yeah. You may think like, oh, it's so daunting to read this whole big book about parenting. But a lot of times you can look at the chapters, see what, relates to your life, read it and get a lot out of it. And a lot of times books, nonfiction books, will have at the end of the chapter, what we've learned. Yeah. And you can read that and get a lot out of it.
Right. And then see, like, do I want to go back and read a particular part?
Yeah.
I'm reading a parenting book right now, and that is excellent advice. Well, and Elizabeth, you just said how you always have something waiting to read. And I think that's really helpful, is always have something good to read so that you're excited to read, and never go anywhere empty-handed. And this is one way, when I travel, because I travel a lot, I always want to read print books. So I'll bring several print books with me, but then I also bring digital reader, and I can check out books from my library on my e-reader. And so then I never risk being without something to read for like a long flight or something, because that terrifies me. And then you get more reading done because you're never at a loss for what to read.
Yeah, I try to think of things like waiting at the doctor's office or something like that as like a great reading time, so it's like, oh, I can actually look forward to being in line because I'm going to be reading.
It's a great way to reframe it. And I actually know somebody who, when the Panoply Studios they moved locations about 1.5 years ago. And somebody said, oh, my commute's gotten so much shorter. And I'm so sad because that's my best reading time. And I loved my long commute. And I thought, well, that's a way to reframe a commute. Either way you win.
Yeah, you don't hear that often, but it's a great point.
I know. That's the beauty of the subway. You can read while you're commuting.
And then you can also read at non-traditional times. Like, I find most people think you should read right before you go to bed. And they're like, well, I get into bed and I start to read, but then I fall asleep. And I go, well, then maybe that's not the best time to read.
Yeah. I can't read before bed. I always fall asleep immediately. I don't understand how anybody does that. Yeah, so you can find unconventional times to do it. I have a friend who works in book publishing, and one of the things people say if you work in book publishing is you have no time to read for fun because you have to read for work all the time. So he specifically gets up at 5:00 every morning because he loves to read, and so he reads for fun for a couple of hours before going into work. And he's a morning person. He's a lark, so this works for him. This would not work for everybody. But for him, it's this wonderful part of the day where he gets to do that reading for fun. It wouldn't work for everybody, but he found a way to carve that time out of his day.
Yeah, I also think people could read at lunch.
Yeah.
I think lunch sometimes you're just kind of surfing the internet or maybe chatting with someone, but for no real reason. It's like if you took a book and went to your office and just read for half an hour, that could be really enjoyable and feel like a real break from the day when often lunch doesn't really feel like a break from the day.
Yes, no, exactly. And that's back to this idea of if you're reading a book that you really love, you're like, oh my gosh, I have this oasis in the middle of my day when I'm going to be reading this wonderful book. It feels very restorative. And yet you don't have to make a lot of plans and arrangements. It's fun to meet a friend for lunch, but you can't always manage that. But you could sneak away and read a book for a half an hour.
And of course, we have to talk about the strategy of having a book club, which we've discussed many times,
Yes.
the pros and the cons and the struggles and glories of book clubs. But I do think for a lot of people, having a book club is a great way to make sure you find time to read because you're like, well, I have to have this book read by, May 1st.
Yes, I'm in 4 book clubs. They are the light of my life. And also for obligers, if you're having trouble reading, it's an accountability structure because if everybody's going to be annoyed if you haven't read the book, you're going to get at least one book read.
Yes.
So let us know if you've found any other good strategies to find more time to read. And what have you tried? What's worked for you? Have some of these strategies worked for you? Have you found other things? When I was working on my book Better Than Before about habit change, I created a PDF called Reading Better Than Before because so many people asked me about how to change their habits to read more. So I'll post a link to that in the show notes for this. And this is happiercast.com/121. And also there's this wonderful kind of manifesto that Daniel Panack wrote called The 10 Inalienable Rights of the Reader, which is wonderful. And I will post a link to that in the show notes as well.
Up next, we'll revisit some clever happiness hacks to help you read more this summer. But first, the spring.
I just had my annual physical, and it reminded me how old-fashioned blood testing can feel. You drive to a lab, sit in a waiting room, get your blood drawn, and then maybe glance at the results before moving on. That's why I'm excited about our partner, Rhythm. Rhythm is the world's easiest blood test to help you learn what's happening inside your body. You do it at home in just 2 minutes with a painless device that sticks in your arm. Then you mail it in and get results back in around 3 days. What I like is that you're not limited to one annual snapshot. Rhythm tracks more than 30 biomarkers, including cholesterol, inflammation, hormones, and metabolic health.
And Rhythm is only $79 per month, a fraction of traditional lab testing. It ships right to your door and you can cancel anytime. Right now, Rhythm is offering our listeners 15% off your first month and free shipping at rhythm.health/happier. That's Rhythm with one H, RYTHM.health/happier for 15% off your first month and free shipping. Stop guessing, start testing. Rhythm.health/happier.
One thing I've learned over the years is that most people don't fail at their health goals because they don't know what to do. We all know we're supposed to move more, eat better, get enough sleep. The problem is actually doing it consistently. That's where today's sponsor, My Body Tutor, comes in.
What makes My Body Tutor different is that it's built around accountability. Inner accountability, making promises to yourself, rarely works for health and fitness. Outer accountability, knowing someone is checking in and expecting to hear from you, is what really drives follow through. With My Body Tutor, you get a real personal coach who checks in with you every single day.
And I love that this isn't a one-size-fits-all program. It's about having someone in your corner helping you stay focused on your goals and making adjustments along the way. I've known founder Adam Gilbert and My Body Tutor for years, and I've always admired his practical approach to helping people create lasting habits.
If you've been struggling to stay consistent, this could be the support you've been looking for. Visit mybodytutor.com/happier for $50 off your first month of coaching. That's mybodytutor.com/happier for $50 off your first month of coaching.
I've been trying to say yes more to little adventures. Nothing huge, just getting out of the routine and going somewhere different for the day. And it really makes you appreciate having a car that feels solid and comfortable, where you're not thinking about the drive, you're just focused on where you're going. That's what stood out to me about the Defender. It has that rugged design, but it also feels really thoughtful inside. And I like that there's a full lineup. from the 2-door 90 to the 110, and the 130 with seating for up to 8. So it really fits different kinds of plans.
And it's built with those durable, purposeful materials so you can actually use it without worrying about every little thing. It also has features that make driving feel easier, like ClearSight technology and the Pivi Pro system, so you can keep track of where you're going and everything you want to listen to along the way. Plus, with up to 89 cubic feet of cargo space and available 3 rows, it gives you a lot of flexibility depending on what you're bringing with you. Explore the full Defender lineup at LandRoverUSA.com. All right, we are back with this week's happiness hack.
This is a great suggestion that comes from Sarah. She says, my suggestion is to start a no homework book club. I love getting together with friends to talk about books, but I don't enjoy a long, in-depth discussion of a single book or literary analysis. I saw a TikTok that suggested an alternate format for a book club, and I decided to try it. Each month you get together and everyone just talks about what they've been reading or listening to, books, podcasts, long-form articles, etc. You share what you liked and didn't, and if you'd recommend it to others. This format is low pressure and for me makes for a more interesting discussion because you learn about lots of books from a diverse group of people. It also solves the problem of a discussion petering out because people haven't completed the book. And it particularly appealed to my rebel sister, who is an avid reader and loves sharing her favorites, but wants to read what she wants to read. In my group, I volunteered to take notes on the recommendations, which I later type into a Google Doc. This isn't necessary, but our group really liked having it to refer to since we got so many reading recommendations. So I think this is a great idea because everybody loves recommendations. Elizabeth, what do you call at the end of Happier in Hollywood? You have a fun
just a recommendation. Just our weekly recommendation, and it's of anything.
Yeah, I think people are always looking. What's a great podcast? What's a great TV show? In all my book groups at the end, we will say, oh, and what else are people doing that they would recommend? It's also great to tell people, hey, don't bother.
Yeah.
I started that, and there are people where that you trust their judgment, and if they read a book and they're like, I'm not sure I would recommend it. I'm like, okay, that's good to know too.
Yeah, it's really a true no-guilt book club.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about a book club is talking to people about other books. So I love this idea.
It is true. Many, many rebels will say that they don't want to do what somebody else tells them to do. And a lot of questioners also say, why would I read a book just because a bunch of people picked it?
Right.
All the tendencies can have issues with it, and this is a way that you can get around that. So I love that.
And it's really building relationships.
That is a huge part of why we are part of these groups. And now for a happiness hack. This hack combines two of my favorite things, reading and clutter clearing.
Yes, and it comes from Gina. She says, I wanted to share this tip that I discovered after doing some spring cleaning that's been bringing so much joy to my life. A couple of months ago, I recatalogued all of my books on my bookshelf after I noticed that there were many out of place and I had several new ones to add that were laying around in piles in my office. I have a wall of built-in bookshelves, and when I was finished reorganizing, I had one empty shelf around eye level. Well, I know that Gretchen loves the luxury of an empty shelf. It looked quite awkward being the only one empty when all of the shelves around it were full. That's when it occurred to me to make it my books I've read this year shelf. I pulled out all the books I've read since January 1st and let them stand together on this shelf, which is only about a third of the way full so far. Not only does it make me happy to see the books that I've already read together in one place, I'm motivated to keep working through my reading list to fill up the shelf. My husband even liked the idea so much we cleared off a shelf for him to have his own. I can't wait for New Year's next year when I can add these books back to their correct categories and start the process all over again.
I think this is great because it's a way of clearing clutter. And it's also a way of giving yourself that ta-da list. It's so fun to have a list of the books that you've read. And I think it really would help you keep up the momentum.
So much fun. Great idea, Gina.
Well, and Elizabeth, you used to do this with the books that we featured on the podcast. You had a special shelf for all the ones we talked about.
I sure did. But Gretchen, we've had so many now that my shelf is overflowing. So I've had to reorganize that.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's such a great idea for reading and clutter clearing. Now, Elizabeth, you and I both love this happiness hack because it's related to reading, which is one of our great passions in life. This is a new way to think about reading. That was such a great idea.
Yes, it comes from our listener, Kelly. She said, whenever my kids are reading a novel for school, I also take out the novel from the library and read it at the same time. It's like a mini book club with your kid. We can have discussion, sharing our thoughts and feelings, our predictions, and I'm able to help on the more elaborate questions that the teacher asks. It also gives me the opportunity to read a book I may not have necessarily chosen to read. It's a win-win situation. I have had the pleasure of reading The Hunger Games, The Giver, The Outsiders, and many more. Well, what a fantastic idea.
That's a great idea for all the reasons that she lists. It's reading a book that you might not otherwise have read, forming a connection with another person. And I think kids are excited when their parents are interested in what they're doing.
Yes.
And so the fact that like, oh, I'm going to read what you're reading for school, it shows a real commitment of interest to what your child is doing.
Yeah, and people are always saying, how can I read more? What's nice is there are also deadlines with this because it's no doubt an assignment. You have to read a certain amount, every week. So it just helps you actually get a book read.
Now, it might be that some of these books are really adult books, but often they're children's books or YA books. And of course, I'm a huge fan of children's literature and YA literature and think that a lot of adults could get tremendous pleasure from reading these books. So I love all the books she mentions, The Hunger Games, The Giver, The Outsiders. They're all great for adults or kids. And if anybody wants to get my list of my 81 all-time favorite children's and young adult books, just email me and I will send you that list because this is another way to turn people on to Kidlit, and I'm always in favor of that.
Yes, and as they get older, it'll be Jane Austen and Shakespeare and all sorts of things.
The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, Gretch, it's time for this week's happiness hack, and it's a reading hack that you came up with.
Yes, and this sounds so obvious, but yet again, it's one of these things where sometimes the most obvious thing is the most helpful, which is improve your reading light. I kind of noticed this subconsciously in many places that I've been, which is that reading light is not great in a lot of places where you would logically read. And we had this place in our apartment where all of a sudden it just dawned on me, the reason why nobody, or at least why I never sat there to read, was that the light just wasn't good. It was actually by a window. There were lights around, but it didn't have that strong on the page light. And as it happened, I had reading lights elsewhere where they were not being really used. And so I just moved them and they look fine. They're very inconspicuous. And now I have this whole new place to read, which feels very, very inviting. But I'm realizing this, as I think back on different places where I've been or different households that I've been to, I think a lot of people just don't realize how much easier and more pleasant it can make reading. And we know from our listeners that one thing a lot of people talk about is wanting to read more. And it might be that one of the reasons you don't feel inclined to read before you go to bed or why you keep picking up your phone is that the light isn't quite as good. And of course, the phone is always well lit because it's glowing with light. And so I just think this is something to think about because reading lights are very cheap.
Yeah, well, Gretchen, when we redid our house, on our bedside table, we each have a lamp, and it never would have occurred to me that we would want more light than that, but we added two of those little things that shine down.
Kind of like you have at a hotel?
Yes, and it's great.
Yeah.
Because you always have reading light and it doesn't disturb the other person as much because you can very much aim it to your book and it keeps the rest of the room fairly dark. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah. And Jamie has one of those clip-on lights because he often reads after I go to sleep. So again, you don't have to have a whole infrastructure for it if you don't want to, but just thinking about, is there a way to improve my reading light? Might that make me more inclined to read because it just feels more comfortable and a little bit easier? So that's my 2 cents on reading lights.
Coming up, we'll revisit a listener question about how to find good books to read this summer, plus some great recommendations for your summer reading list. But first, this break. Have you ever noticed that some of the most meaningful moments in life come from helping someone else? It's easy to think that changing the world requires doing something extraordinary, but sometimes lasting change begins with something much smaller, helping one child overcome the barriers that stand between them and an education. That's what Children Incorporated has been doing for more than 60 years.
By partnering with trusted volunteer coordinators who know the children and families in their own communities, Children Incorporated helps provide essentials like clothing, shoes, nutritious food, school supplies, and hygiene items, giving children the support they need to stay in school and build brighter futures. The surprising thing about generosity is that it changes everyone involved. If you've been looking for a simple, meaningful way to make a lasting difference, visit childrenincorporated.org to choose a child to sponsor today. One thing I've learned about summer dressing is that the pieces you love most are usually the simplest ones, the things you reach for again and again because they're comfortable, versatile, and always seem to work. That's why we keep coming back to Quince. I've been especially loving their European linen pieces. They're lightweight, easy to wear, and somehow look polished without requiring any effort.
Quince makes elevated essentials using premium materials like European linen, organic cotton, and washable silk, but without the traditional markup. Their linen pants, dresses, and tops start at just $32, and their soft denim and organic cotton sweaters are perfect for cooler summer evenings. I also love their 14-karat gold jewelry, simple pieces that instantly pull an outfit together. Make your summer wardrobe feel easier. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
And now for a listener question.
This week it comes from Sam, who says, ever since I did #read21 and 21, I've been reading much more regularly, and it makes me so happy. I've noticed that when I don't get much reading done, it's because I don't know what book to read next. You two never seem to have trouble figuring out your next book. How do you find suggestions? Do you often read books that you recommend to each other? I have one friend who recommends books often, and it took me a while to realize I don't like her taste. So I'm trying to give myself lots of ways to get ideas.
Oh, that's such a fun question.
Oh, yes. And there's so many ways.
Yes. So, Elizabeth, what are some of the ways you do?
Well, one way I get suggestions is, Gretchen, my sister-in-law, Olivia Fierro, has a podcast called Olivia's Book Club, which is every week. So she has lots of book suggestions, and she and I like a lot of the same kinds of books. So I usually know if she loves something, I'll love it.
Yeah.
Also, Gretchen, listeners, Happier and Hollywood listeners suggest lots of books to Sarah and me, and often those I will read. And then another time I get a lot of recs is when I hike with my friends. So, you know, that's just a lot of time to chat, and we will always talk about books and television shows. And then I can go off and read a book and then talk about it with them on another hike.
Well, and I would agree. I would say family and friends for sure. Both of our parents read a lot, so I get a lot of reading recommendations from them.
Yes.
My friends read a lot. I'm in 3 book clubs, so that's a lot of recommendations. I love roundups and best ofs, like if you're looking online or in articles, magazines and newspapers. I love the podcast Backlisted. I highly recommend that, which is about backlist books, meaning books that were published, a while back, not new books. And same thing, there's a quarterly called Slightly Fox. Those focus on things that came out many, many years ago, but, it's new to you if you haven't read it.
Yes.
Yeah, so magazines and newspapers. But one of the things that's been great about my book tour is I'm hanging out with all these booksellers. And I always say, what have you read, what's great, and what are people really excited about? And so they always have so many suggestions. And they often know about books before they've come out, too. So they can say, like, ooh, everybody's really excited about this book. So I've been writing down a lot of recommendations, and I've been buying books along the way, which has sort of been a problem because I had packed my carry-on bag to the gills, and then I ended up buying some books, and it's like, okay, I learned my lesson. Do not do that. I had to jam all these books into my backpack and lug it around. And
that's so funny, Gretch. I saw a photo of you with a stack of books at a bookstore online, and I thought to myself, how is she carrying all of these books? So you couldn't resist.
Yes. So it's fun to hear how people get ideas. So if you have other sources that you love, New York Times Book Review podcast is great. This is a great thing to have a list to recommend.
Also, you and I were talking about is staff picks.
Oh,
at the bookstore, often,
picks.
Especially at like an indie bookstore, there will be staff picks. And it might even say what it is, sort of love this page turner or love this thoughtful meditation on life or whatever.
Yeah.
And those are people who read a lot. So,
well, and I just find that if somebody has really, really highly recommended a book to me, there's a level of quality below which it doesn't go.
Yes.
Even if it's not my favorite book, if somebody loves it, it's probably pretty good.
Yes.
So, what a fun question. More reading for all. Elizabeth, we were inundated with suggestions after our discussion in episode 478, where we had the Try This at Home suggestion to make life more interesting by reading a book that sheds light on how things work. And it's so funny because I thought that you and I kind of had this idiosyncratic thing where we really enjoyed these books. I didn't know that this was like a thing. Well, like so often, it turns out that you feel like you're sort of the only one interested in something or doing something. It turns out, oh no, this is something that many people share.
Yes. So we will run through some of the suggestions we got. Kathy says, as an engineer, this book spoke to me. The evolution of useful things, how everyday artifacts from forks and pins to paper clips and zippers came to be as they are, by Henry Petrosky.
I bought that book to give to Eliza because it sounded like she would love it. Corey said, one of my most recommended books ever, and I always feel weird recommending it because it sounds kind of lame, but it is so good. It's called Upstairs at the White House, My Life with the First Ladies by J.B. West. The author was the chief usher at the White House for decades, and it's so fascinating to read about the different presidents and first ladies he got to know. You will love it.
That sounds good. Margaret said, I recently read Maggie Bullock's book, The Kingdom of Prep, the inside story of the rise and near fall of J. Crew. The book chronicles the company's beginnings up to, I believe, the 2020s. It is an easy read and a very interesting look into this iconic brand. Gretch, I was just talking the other day about Jenna Lyons on More Happier. I think this is one I 100% need to read.
Yeah. Cindy suggests two books that both sound fascinating by Rose George. One is 9 Pints, A Journey Through the Money, Medicine, and Mysteries of Blood, and The Big Necessity, The Unmentionable World of Human Waste and Why It Matters. They both sound good.
Kelsey says, I have a great book recommendation for you since you love to learn about how things work. Me too, and have not read the books you mentioned, so adding those to my to-be read. I want to share one of my favorites, Gut, the inside story of our body's most underrated organ by Julia Enders.
Fascinating. Carol said, I'd like to recommend The Song Machine, Inside the Hit Factory by John Seabrook. It tends to take a lot for me to get interested in pop music, and when my daughter was in high school, as I chauffeured her about, she would listen to popular music. This book came up, and something about it piqued my interest. For a long while after that, I would drive my daughter crazy by pointing out the construction of the songs on the radio.
Marcy says, Dog is Love, Why and How Your Dog Loves You by Clive Wynne is one of my newest favorites, and If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor by Bruce Campbell is an old favorite. I love learning about cutting-edge canine genetics and the human-dog relationship in Dog is Love, and how Bruce Campbell and his hometown friends turned a childhood 8mm hobby into careers in If Chins Could Kill. I love that title.
Yeah.
There are also podcasts that uncover the design of everyday life, as well as my very favorite, which is 99% Invisible by Roman Mars. Each episode provides the story of something we all take for granted or how a design challenge was overcome.
That's a great podcast. Stephanie said, one book I recommend to everyone is How Buildings Learn, What Happens After They're Built by Stuart Brand. The cover says it all, a print of two identical homes side by side from 1850s and a recent photo where they look so different. I have read this book. Fascinating.
Stephanie says, here are a few of my favorites. The Library Book by Susan Orlean, Anything by Mary Roach, Bonk, Stiff, Spook. Oh, I know Sarah likes Stiff.
I love Mary Roach. I read everything she writes.
And The Way Things Work by David Macaulay.
Yeah, that's a huge classic. This is another book that I bought for Eliza, and I want to borrow it because it sounds so good. Angela suggests Meet Me by the Fountain, An Inside History of the Mall by Alexandra Lang.
Nikki says, I'm writing to recommend Paved Paradise, How Parking Explains the World by Henry Graybar. It sheds light on how parking policy is created, not very well it turns out, and what we're willing to do to store our cars.
Interesting. Jackie says, the best books that explain how things work are written by Bill Bryson. My favorite of all time is titled At Home, A Short History of Private Life. He goes room by room through a house to explain the history and origins of how we live. And then also many people suggested Bill Bryson's book, The Body, A Guide for Occupants. I've read both those books. I love Bill Bryson.
These titles are amazing.
I know.
Barb said, you must read An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Yong, especially because of your interest in senses.
I have read An Immense World. It is so good. Suzanne said, you may have already read this one, but Anthony Bourdain wrote the book Kitchen Confidential, Adventures in the Culinary Underbelly. This is a behind-the-scenes read at how a chef runs a restaurant and why you don't want to order fish on Monday. I haven't read that. Have you read that, Alyssa?
I have, and there was also a show based on it.
Yes.
That friends of mine worked on.
That's right.
Lori has a podcast recommendation. She said, on my morning walk, I listened to a podcast from the U.S. Postal Service called Mailin' It. The January 23rd episode chronicles the journey of new stamps. I thought it was fascinating and thought you might enjoy knowing how that works, even though it isn't a book.
Love a podcast. Jenna says, this book is absolutely fascinating and I believe has very important information for those of us who wear clothes to know. Unraveled, The Life and Death of a Garment by Maxine Bennett.
And this comes from Janice. Here's another podcast recommendation, The Economics of Everyday Things. They are 15 to 20-minute episodes on niche industries like Foley artists or specific items like hotel soaps. Great for quick drives and very interesting insights.
I really like that podcast. I listen to that. And then finally, Alessandra recommends two books, Hot Box, Inside Catering, The Food World's Riskiest Business by Matt Lee. After reading this, I will never go to an event or party and not appreciate the MacGyver-type effort it may have taken for me to enjoy a hot hors d'oeuvre or entree. And then The Residence, Inside the Private World of the White House by Kate Anderson Brower. A fascinating look at the everyday inside workings of the White House from the people who work there. Oh, people are interested in the White House.
Yes. All of these sound great, Gretchen.
Yes, my to-be-read list is now dangerously longer than it was before.
Yes. Okay, Gretch, what is our spotlight on a tool this week?
Yeah, if this episode has got you thinking about what you'd like to read this summer, try the reading queue in the Design Your Summer tool in the Happier app. It is where I am tracking my summer of Virginia Woolf's diaries, and it's a great place to keep all your summer reading plans in one spot. You can also use the rest of the Design Your Summer tools to choose a theme for your summer, make a summer bucket list, and capture memories as the season unfolds.
And where do people find it?
You can find the Design Your Summer tool in the Happier app. Go to thehappierapp.com, or you can download the app from the App Store or Google Play.
Ooh, I'm excited to check out this feature.
Well, Elizabeth, are you feeling happier?
Yes, I am feeling happier. Thank you to Chuck. Bye, Gretch.
Bye, Elizabeth. The best time to start a happiness project is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
The GLP-1 pill you've been waiting for is now on Ro. Yep, it's finally here. With the same clinically proven ingredient, now in a pill, and now on Ro. It's the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss at the lowest price available. That's one daily GLP-1 pill for big results. Now on Ro. Go to ro.co/listen to see if you qualify. RX only. Go to ro.co/safety for serious side effects and boxed warning associated with GLP-1s.